Families are great. But sometimes when we have a family reunion or a big event where we expect everyone to come, families can sometimes be disappointing. A cousin didn't show up, an aunt said something inappropriate, grandma made a remark, and suddenly we are faced with feelings that we don't know how to express to the family that we're supposed to love and who's supposed to love us back. My guest today, Bailey, brings us a question exactly about that. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Bailey because it opens a door for all of us to think about our relationships with our family members and how we handle conflict when it appears. I'm Mauricio Bruce, and this is The Real Question. Hi, Bailey. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
I am very excited that you're here, and I'm very excited for us to have a wonderful conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you've been listening to the show, though, before we get to that, I put you through this thing where I ask you a question and I say, if there is one thing you could share about yourself, what would you like to share?
Yes, I've been thinking about it. I think what I will share that will end up being pertinent to this conversation also, but that is just important to me is something that's really important to both me as a person and as my career. So I'm a Christian. I'm actually was recently ordained, and I feel really strongly that Christianity can have a positive impact on the world. And I get really angry and upset that a lot of the forms in the world choose to have a negative impact instead. So something that's important to me in my work and in my life is really trying to be a counter to that and trying to provide alternate expressions and also to try to speak out against that where it happens. That's just something that's really important to me. And I feel really privileged that I get to do that in my work. And yeah, that's a big part of who I am.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing all that. I think that's lovely. And I actually am excited to see how, because you said it'll be part of our conversation. So I'm excited to see how it comes up and how we can keep exploring that idea.
Yeah.
I'm curious right now, before we even get into the conversation, Can I ask what denomination of Christianity you're ordained in?
Yeah, so I'm a minister in the United Church of Canada, which for folks outside of Canada, it's a denomination that was formed about 100 years ago. Well, actually, almost exactly. It was the 100th anniversary this year, from a union of primarily like Methodist, Congregationalist, local union churches, and about half of the Presbyterian church that existed at the time in Canada. And so very theologically and socially progressive and liberal denomination. So that's where I sort of sit in the landscape.
Okay. Thank you for sharing all that.
Oh, you're welcome.
So now, just so you can quell my curiosity, let's get to your question. What question did you bring us?
Yeah, so I think that my question is, should I try to talk with my cousin about theology?
Ooh.
Is I think what the question is.
Okay. So I'm going to ask for context because I'm curious why this is here. Why are we wondering if your cousin would want to talk about theology?
So I'll just set the stage. So I grew up quite close to all the cousins on this side of my family. There's only 6 of us in total. That includes my brother and me. And so we're a fairly close extended family. This one cousin has maybe been slightly less close to the rest of the family over the past couple of years, like since having kids. And I think most of that is the logistics of that. But then also one of the things that's in the mix is the rest of our extended family is either non-religious or a similar style of Christianity to me. But this cousin kind of got into a very conservative church as a young person and is quite a conservative Christian. That's sort of the style of religion that he and his family practice. And then the more immediate background is that I just got married about a week and a half ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. This is really fresh.
Yeah, this is really, really fresh. So I got married about a week and a half ago to my wonderful, wonderful spouse. And this cousin, along with all of my extended family on that side, was invited to the wedding. And the way in which he declined that invitation made there not be a doubt in my mind that the reason he was choosing not to come was because of religiously motivated homophobia. He said nothing.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. He said nothing to actually suggest that, but you can tell when there are things going on. And so that's kind of where we have been sitting for the past month or so, is knowing he wasn't coming. But of course, we didn't have direct confirmation. And so last week, we were kind of talking about this, and my dad was just like, I'm going to call my brother, who is my cousin's father, and just see if we can get some clarity. And so he talked to his brother, and yeah, it turns out that it was what we suspected, but in a way that wasn't on my bingo card, in a sense. Because when all this happened, I was like, oh, he's just pretending to be nice to me for the past several years. And at least what we've been told is the case. What he said to his parents is that he doesn't have a problem with, in scare quotes, because I have feelings about that phrasing, our relationship, or me and my partner, but doesn't believe in queer marriage. Thinks that, I don't know if specific words about the sanctity of marriage were used, but having a problem with, not condoning queer marriage, but is sad that I was upset and wants to continue having a relationship. This is what was expressed to his parents and then to my parents. So I have not talked to him directly about any of this.
Okay.
But this is sort of what I've been told.
Okay. Let me ask some questions around that. This is an awful situation. I'm so sorry to hear that this has happened.
Thank you.
First question. There was kind of a telephone game there, right? You talked to your dad, who talked to his dad, who talked to him, who then talked back to your dad. And I'm wondering, what has kept you over the last however much since he said he wasn't coming to the wedding from reaching out or from speaking directly to him?
Yeah, I think really the way in which he declined that. What happened was, we sent out invitations, and then there were a handful of people for various reasons who hadn't RSVP'd by about a month out. So I sent an email to all of them saying, hey, could you please let us know either way if you're coming or not? Would really appreciate it. And then we heard back from most people, still didn't hear back from him. So I sent him a personal email saying hey, would understand if you can't make it, would really love to have you at the wedding. These are the things that we've done to make sure to accommodate kids at the wedding. Really hope we can see you there. Lots of love, Bailey. And that went unanswered for about a week. And then I was really I've tried a couple times to find out. So I was like, Dad, can you ask your brother if he knows if they're coming or not? Just because at this point we really need numbers. And then I got an extremely terse email back from my cousin saying basically, sorry, we're not coming, wish you well, which is uncharacteristic. You know how some people are characteristically terse and you don't read into it? And some people are not.
Yeah.
That was the point at which I was oh, he actually just has been secretly hating me for several years.
Oh.
And that's why I didn't reach out at that point. And it was also just it was still really fresh. I think I didn't feel ready to have the confrontation with him directly, but I'm at a position now where I think I would like to try to have some kind of conversation with him. And I'm trying to think through what exactly I want that to involve. Because I think there are a few different levels of things that I would kind of like to say to him, and I haven't worked out which ones I actually am going to.
Yeah. So you sent out the invitations. He didn't reply. You sent out a reminder. He didn't reply. Another email, didn't reply. Then dad to and then back. And then he replies after being talked to by his father. He replies with sort of a short, stern response. And I heard you say, that's when I thought he's been secretly hating me for all this time. That's what you read there.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there room, because we don't know, we haven't spoken to him directly, is there room there to hold the possibility that all this not answering is him grappling with his own beliefs and thoughts?
I do think there's a possibility of that. And I think I'm like caught between this tension right now of like wanting to imagine that that's maybe part of it. And also like this self-protective anger on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really where I've been kind of like stuck a little bit.
Listen, as a queer man, I get it.
Yeah.
I've had plenty of those moments myself.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you said, there's 6 of us, including my brother, and we've always been very close. And there's been a dynamic that you've enjoyed until this moment.
No, absolutely. And that's why, like, I think there are some other family members that I have, like particularly on my other side of the family that we're less close to, that if something like this happens, I would just be like, okay, I'm just not talking to you.
Yeah.
But I do have a resistance to that here because I wasn't expecting this despite knowing how conservatively religious this cousin is, because I've always thought of him as a very caring and loving person who does like value our family. And so it did take me by surprise. And that is why I think I have this impulse to want to see if there is a dialogue that can be had, while also knowing that I am someone that can have a tendency to not stand up for myself to the degree that I would like to be able to.
Yeah.
So like being like concerned about that as well.
Yeah.
And concerned about wanting to really stand up for my new spouse as well. And,
of course.
And be like, this isn't okay.
And so like I just want to acknowledge that first part, which is sort of what you're getting at right there, is I'm really hurt.
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
This person who I really respected and who I really loved has sort of let me down.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the core of it, really. And that's honestly, like, I think the first thing that I want to say to him beyond all of the queer stuff is just like, listen, like, regardless of what this is about, like, that was a shitty way to treat me.
Yeah.
Just like leaving us dangling, like, we're trying to plan a wedding.
Yeah.
Like, that was just not a good way to treat somebody.
Agreed. And so I'm just going to bring us back, and I'm going to wonder, your question was, should I try to talk with my cousin about theology? And so I'm wondering, why is this phrase, this theology for you?
Yeah. So the reason is because I know that I want to talk to him about that first thing that I said about like, this is a shitty way to treat someone. Another thing that I've decided that I want to have a conversation about him a little bit is just to be like, listen, like, you need to understand that like saying you're okay with our relationship, but not okay with us getting married is not actually being supportive or open or anything. Like, that is still homophobic. And that is still a really hurtful attitude to have, thing to do. Because I have a feeling that he's maybe trying to walk this line where like he feels like he's not being homophobic or unsupportive, because he's like, well, I don't have a problem with you two. I just have a problem with you getting married.
Yeah.
I think I really do want to make it clear to him that like that's actually like those things are in opposition to each other.
Yeah.
So those are the parts of the conversation that I think will be hard. But I am like, yes, I feel like I need and want to talk to him about. The part that is the big question mark for me is because of who I am as a person. Like, I feel like this is a different conversation than if I were someone who wasn't religious, because then I would maybe more just be focused on the homophobia. But I'm also like, I feel like you are misrepresenting the religion that we have in common. And that also makes me angry in a very personal and professional capacity. Because I just like very truly do not believe that the Christian faith, the Bible, actually is in agreement with homophobia or in opposition to queer acceptance. I always want to push back against that. And then there's also the part of me, and there's the part of me that hopes that maybe like this could actually be a productive conversation to have with him, because like I do think that he is a loving person in general, and I'm like, maybe he's just never been exposed to this. And like, maybe there's an inroad there. And then there's the self-protective part of me that's like, that's a bad idea. You're just going to get hurt or just get yourself way too angry because you're too close to it. And that's not a good road to go down. This is the question, I think, is like, which side of that do I want to listen to and which side of that do I want to go with?
Yeah. Let's start with the first part, because the first part is, this was a shitty way to treat me.
Yeah.
And you can't say, I'm okay, but not okay. Like, those things are in opposition. Like, I'm okay with you having a queer relationship, but just not queer marriage. Those are in opposition to each other. Yeah. And let me see if I'm right. When I hear that, those are coming from cousin Bailey.
Yeah. This is exactly it, I think.
And then there's a part that is coming from Pastor Bailey, who says, and now let's talk about Christianity.
Yeah. And that's the part where there's the question mark, is like, this feels, like Rev Bailey, this feels like, is this something I want to bring into my familial relationship that makes sense to, or is it getting too close to it? That's the question.
I'm sorry I called you Pastor Bailey. I was Reverend Bailey.
Oh, no, that's pastor's also fine.
Just want to put that out there. So I think that's a beautiful question, because there's a role, right, that you take on that is your professional role, that is also a role, a spiritual role that speaks to multiple parts of you. I don't want to separate them, but I do want to separate them.
No, I think it's useful. And like, I've been thinking of that in my head, because like, I have these conversations with people I don't have personal relationships with professionally, but I'm in, I guess, the privileged position of not having to have this exact conversation with folks personally. Like, I've had conversations with people who are kind of having difficulty wrapping their heads around things. Like, I'm also non-binary. So like, I've had conversations kind of helping people wrap their heads around that, but I have not had someone who is an important person in my life who is kind of taking a really directly oppositional stance rather than a I'm struggling to understand stance.
I want to hold this really tenderly, but there's a part of Bailey that's really hurt. And we've talked about that, right? You're really, really hurt that this person that you loved let you down. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to be able to hold that part, but also because you're thinking this through, you're having this conversation with me, you're not just reacting, to also make a space so that part doesn't just have to go and react.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. I see you trying to do it so carefully.
Yeah.
But I also see this professional part of Bailey that wants to come out and sort of teach. You said, like, maybe there's an inroad, maybe I can go in there and teach. And I think there's room for that. I just don't think they're in the same conversation.
Oh, interesting.
I think there's a relationship that you guys have that is a relationship that you need to sort of heal that relationship because it's broken. The things that happen have broken that relationship, and that's causing you a lot of pain. You're hurt. There's a wound right there that's sort of like hurting and bleeding and making a mess. And I think there's room to have that more serious, that more theological conversation. But I think if this wound is open and if it's hurt, that wound is going to be doing the teaching. And I don't know if that's the place you want to teach from.
Yeah, I think you've hit on like the thing that I've been coming up against, which is, like that's what's not there when I have these conversations with people professionally.
That's exactly right.
Is I can create that distance.
And let's just do something for a second, if you'll play with me.
Yeah.
Let's switch places just for a moment. Your angry cousin, and here comes cousin Bailey and starts to talk from Reverend.
Yeah.
And I want to know what you would feel or how you would react to that conversation.
Probably not well, probably defensively.
Yeah. I feel the same way. When I put myself in that place, I might just go, oh, no, this is just making me more upset. And of course, I'm not equating that you not listening to their position is the same as them being homophobic. But I'm trying to just sort of come in from love rather than come in from, I'm going to correct you.
No, absolutely. And that's like, I think like I wanted help thinking through that perspective too. Cause like there is, I think that this is the other part. Like I know that this conversation will go the best if I am able to, even in the Cousin Bailey role, approach it with my pastoral hat on in terms of attempting to be as generous, as understanding as I can be. And like, that's not always easy for me to access when I'm angry. I mean, I don't think that's easy for anyone to access when they're angry.
I think it's one of the hardest things we do.
And I also have like my spouse who's very protective of me and very like, ready to go to war for me.
Yes.
Which I love and appreciate so much. But I'm like, I feel like I need to figure out how to not go into this with that attitude.
Because what happens when we go to war?
Well, you don't mend relationships.
Yeah, somebody wins and somebody loses, and it's done.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's definitely like, there's that little part of me that wants to just go and win. But I don't think that's the part that I want to let win.
Yeah. And so when we're hurt and we have a wound, we want to go take our sword and like jam it right in and say, oh yeah, you want to know how this hurts? This is how it hurts. Which is great. Sometimes we need to do that.
Yeah.
But I think with loved ones, especially relationships that have been important, I wonder if we can approach first with love to see if there's a possibility of mending, of healing, of creating a path forward before I then take my sword out and jam it in.
No, absolutely. And that's what I want to do, especially like knowing that like he does apparently like have this openness to that. I do want to see if that's possible.
And I just want to make it clear that making a path forward does not mean that you have to cede or accept some of his views. Like, okay, you can see me as less or whatever they're insinuating.
Yeah.
Right? That's never the way forward.
No, and I think if that is sort of what comes out of that conversation, then it'll be a really different path forward. But I want to give him the opportunity, I think.
And now let's just prepare for something else, that there is a possibility that as a conservative Christian, he decides to quote scripture.
Yeah.
And so then you can definitely put on your reverend hat.
Yeah.
Right? If he opens that door, then
that's
it's
true.
fair game.
Yeah, if the door is open, then that's a door that I'm not going to not step through.
That's right.
Because if you try to clobber me with clobber passages, I will have some things to say about that.
Yes, absolutely. But that's not where we start.
Yeah. No, I really like that. I think that gives me a lot of clarity of how I want to approach this. And then, depending on how that first conversation goes, finding opportunities in the future to be like, hey, could we like chat about where this comes from for you? Because like, that's really not what I see in the Bible. Yeah.
And, I think for me anyway, and you can tell me for you, but there's always something really beautiful, really tender, and that I really want to take care of when somebody comes and says, I'm really hurt. What you did hurt me or made me angry or really I felt like did not honor the love that we have for each other. And I think coming from that vulnerable place to a family member, to someone who you have had a loving relationship with, for me sets the conversation at a place of vulnerability rather than a confrontation or a war. Does that feel safe for you to do, like in this case? Like, or does it not feel safe? Because I would want you to feel safe.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a part of me that will always feel not completely safe, but like,
Okay.
I think in a tolerable way. Like this is another part of the background is just like, I have trouble with confrontation and conversation. And a lot of that comes from the fact that this side of the family who I love so very much are what I like to jokingly describe as weapons grade wasps. In that we don't talk about things. That plays into this whole situation, is that we are really good at not talking about things.
It's really easy.
Yeah, it's so easy to not talk about things. I mean, except for like, how the stress gives you a chronic illness, but
except that, but otherwise
it's really great to not talk about things.
Listen, and especially in families where there are queer children.
Yeah.
It's so easy to also interpret that as, let's just not talk about me, because that keeps things easy.
Yeah.
If we don't have to talk about who or what I like or how I identify, then it's easy. We all get along.
Yeah, that's a nail on the head for sure.
And it's important to start sometimes slowly. Sometimes you need to, bring out the guns, but to break those patterns and to start to offer a healthier environment where we can talk. And I also want you to be safe and to take care of yourself during this conversation. And if you feel like it's going somewhere that's not safe, you can always just step back and say, you know what, I'm going to go. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think that'll definitely be part of it. And I think like I've talked to my partner about, making sure that I'm not alone when I'm on the phone with them and all of that as well.
And I wonder, just to sort of like explore all of the avenues, Bailey, sometimes there is a sense that, I'm talking from the experience of my family, where we are all very close with all the cousins and all the aunts and all the uncles. And when somebody does something that is offensive or annoying, you talk around it or sometimes about it, but you try to forgive them because they're family. And so there's this idea that we can't punish family, or that we can't stop talking to family and sometimes we need to close that door and say, I'm going to miss you, but it's not working.
Yeah. And I think I do very much want to keep that on the table, depending on how things play out. But hoping it doesn't go there.
Yeah, me too.
But that definitely does feel on the table, depending.
Okay, so let's take a deep breath. Let's sort of release some of the tension we've been talking around. And then I just want to ask you, back to your original question, when you think now, should I try to talk with my cousin about theology? What's the feeling right now about the question you came in with?
Yeah, I think the feeling is clarity that I think, yes, I would like to, but I think this feels very correct that it's not a one conversation. I think it does have to start with those two other things that I was sure that I wanted to talk about, which is the relational piece, which is this is not an okay way to treat me. And I need you to know that, because I would like to have a relationship with you, but we can't if you think this is an okay way to treat me and you aren't going to try to make up for that in any way. And then, I think I would love, if that goes well, to be able to then try to be curious about what he's thought about his beliefs around this, about if he's open to being introduced to some other perspectives and some other scholarship. And I would really love to be able to do that. But I don't think that that's in that first conversation, unless he opens the door.
That's right.
And then I will be ready.
Amazing. And maybe, maybe the door won't be opened as a bad thing.
Yeah. Because there's a part of me that has this hope that's well, maybe it's actually possible to help you come to a more loving interpretation of your faith. And I want to not lean on that too much or put too many eggs in that basket, but I do want to open that door. But I think the sort of reconciling the relationship is the first piece that needs to happen.
Oh, wow, Bailey, you have a beautiful conversation ahead of you, I hope. I'm so sorry that this happened.
Thank you.
But congratulations to you and your spouse. And I hope that this is the beginning of a beautiful marriage and a beautiful path together.
Yeah. And despite that, it was an absolutely wonderful wedding. And we felt super, super loved. And it was really, really gorgeous, really, really representative of us. And yeah, and I'm really glad to be married to my spouse. So that's the heart of it.
That's beautiful. Bailey, would it be appropriate if in 3 months or so we had a conversation again and you could let me know how the conversation went, where you are in the relationship and what happened?
Sure, absolutely. That's a good accountability for me as well. So yeah, happy to.
Okay. Thank you for bringing this path for us, this conversation. Mm-hmm. I think anyone who listens to this conversation will be able to get something out of it.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate being able to work through this with you. It really helped kind of clarify some things for me, and really going to be going into this feeling more equipped and more prepared and aware of how I want to be and what I want to get out of things.
This has been The Real Question. Our show is funded through our Patreon at patreon.com/realquestionpod. And if you still haven't been to Patreon, I really want you to come just so you can see everything that we offer. And on top of that, you can support the show. Another way you can support this show is by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. Reviews help other listeners find the show. And so if you want other people to listen to us answering real questions, that's something you can do. You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Real Question Pod. We're always looking for more guests, so please go to our website, realquestionpod.com, and submit your question. I would love to have a conversation with you right here on the show. We love to shout out our BFF tier patrons, Renee Underhill, Amanda Schramm, Christina Igu Brandon, and Jackson Paul Keeley. Thank you. We are a Not Sorry production. Our co-executive producers are Vanessa Zoltan and Ariana Nettleman. We were guest produced today by Vanessa Zoltan. Music is by Nick Bowl, and we're distributed by Acast. Support for this show comes from the Fetzer Institute. Thank you, Bailey, for joining us today. Thank you for being vulnerable, and thank you for bringing this conversation about family and the way we solve conflict with them. And thanks as always to our wonderful team, Julia Argy, Nikki Zoltan, AJ Yaramas, Anissa Ahmed, Danny Langley, Courtney Brown, Casper Turkile, and Stephanie Paulsell. This has been one more episode of The Real Question. See you next week for another question and another conversation.